This is the first video I'm doing after sunset, technically, so let's see how it goes and how long I can make it go. I wanted to do a video after the New Moon and Gemini video that I did a few days ago, where I think I really was struggling with integrating the energies in Pisces and Gemini. So clearly listening to that video is going to be a help. I think I'm finally clear about how these energies are working together. There's something amusing about struggling with integrating these two energies because that's what a square is. That's what a 90-degree angle is between planets in signs that square each other, that create this kind of tense aspect between each other. You know, the very yin sign of Pisces that is about togetherness and not really about separateness. That sounds vague, but it's Piscean enough that I'm going to let it go and let it fly. And the much more yang sign of Gemini, which is much more about separateness but connectedness by listening, talking, interacting, but very much keeping a focus on self and how self can benefit from fitting in with each other and what is going on, what's the news, what's the gossip, what's the interaction, what's going on, you know, how do I fit in with the people who are around me at any given time, and how do we use information and data that we impart to each other to improve our circumstances? Whereas Pisces, in a certain sense, is about a certain amount of compassion, acceptance, inclusion, and also letting go of the egoic and really focusing more on the spiritual and the connectedness. So both these signs, it's not like these signs are opposed to each other, but they're certainly, you know, I'm not going to go so far as to say that they share. You could argue that because both are mutable, they share a certain principle of flexibility, but there's a tension between them. Now, there are 5 transits we're looking at, and I want to do this video just to bring the new moon and Gemini energies home, so that after about 48 to 72 hours of the new moon, certain things are starting to make sense. And I want to say thank you to clients and other people who've written in and now starting to provide a little bit more information so we can start to make sense of these energies. The primary issue I have with my new moon and Gemini video is that there's a part of me that is a little bit in denial around especially the Mars and Gemini energy. There was a part of me that wanted to either ignore it or downplay it or just kind of be in a certain amount of denial around it. The bottom line is there are 5 transits at play, and they're all necessary and they're all essential. And how they work together and play together is going to continue to evolve. First and foremost, as I said, if these videos resonate, great. If they don't, make note of them, put them to the side, and if something starts to emerge that seems like it might be relevant, then wow, there is that light there. Well, this is what happens when you do videos at a new time. I wonder how long this will last. You know, there is, if it resonates, but otherwise just make note of what's being said, and if it feels like it's useful to revisit it, you can revisit it later. Be clear that the complexity with this new moon has to do with the interplay with the eclipses. It's not a normal new moon, even though it is not an eclipse. Simply by virtue of there being so many planets in Gemini and it being a new moon that sets the June 5th lunar eclipse into motion. And also, we are now officially really in eclipse season. We have the first of 3 eclipses in less than 2 weeks' time. And so also note that even though this video is talking about a certain amount of stress and tension or dynamic and creative tension between 2 parts of the chart, eclipses can manifest in an incredibly positive way for certain people, and I am seeing that. Offers, opportunities, even while we're in lockdown and creativity, sort of quantum leaps of expansion. Quantum leaps of change, that's what eclipses can be about. And not every eclipse and not every eclipse date hits everyone in the same way. And not everyone is, you know, there are billions of people on this planet. Not everyone is hit by lightning in the same way. Not everyone is transitioning. A certain amount of change is upon us, and we're going to use the next year and a half to see how the Gemini-Sagittarius eclipses really change us. It is worth it and important, in my experience, to note what is coming up at this time, insofar as it sets the stage for certain themes that are going to be playing out this year and next year. And knowing where Gemini and Sagittarius sit in your chart will help you. Okay? 5 transits. First and foremost, the new moon itself in the sign of Gemini. Venus entered Gemini on April the 4th. On May the 6th or so, she squared Neptune in Pisces for the first time. These are all important dates in terms of developments. And on May the 13th, she went retrograde. So some of these Gemini energies have been in play. And wherever Gemini sits in your chart, relationship and financial issues, I can tell, even I'm getting sick of saying the same thing over and over again. So if you are, I apologize. This is meant to summarize energies. So I'll do it, and we'll let this go soon enough. So relationship and financial energies in the sign of Gemini came into play with Venus going retrograde, as I've mentioned ad nauseum on this channel, reevaluating relationship and financial dynamics and situations, your own, especially with connection to what you own and what owns you, what you value, where you think you're headed, what you think you know at this point in time after over a month now of shelter in place, and how it has brought in change, a certain amount of forward movement without a doubt, a certain amount of technical innovation, a certain change in our circumstances, and how we adjust to that is part of what this time period till the middle of July is about. This particular phase is continues to be about reevaluating financial situations and relationship situations, and perhaps revisiting creative, artistic opportunities or opportunities from the past in some way. Now, the first phase of this Gemini energy ended right before the new moon. The sun and the moon trine Saturn, and a retrograde Venus and the planet Mercury that rules Gemini met up. So as we headed to the May 22nd new moon, there has to have been a certain amount of communication, written, verbal, fitting in, conversation, all that kind of stuff. There must be some birds in the tree behind me. This feels very Hitchcock all of a sudden. And with all of it, it may have felt as we went to the new moon that a certain phase or a certain set of activities had reached a certain culmination or an ending. And the bizarre thing with the new moon, as we reflected, is, and yet these energies or energies related to these energies or energies showing up in different forms are here to stay. So the first phase, which included Venus coming in, announcing relationship and financial opportunities, going retrograde on May the 13th, asking us to reevaluate some of these financial relationship opportunities, playing out in different spheres perhaps, not just one thing, and getting to a place of communication, even perhaps a little bit of a certain amount of this conflict between Pisces and Gemini starting to show up already in place as the new moon happened. Then by the time the new moon happens, the moon is reduced to zero. You cannot see it. And it's when this crescent starts to appear that certain things start to build a certain amount of momentum and show up again. Doing a video at this time is a mistake. Note to self. Okay, because it's getting darker and darker. Fascinating. The iPhone is trying to keep up, and it's 8 minutes in. We've got to get this done and get this home. So there is, I think that insofar as we're going to experience this new moon again in Gemini, know if it'll help you to know where Gemini is in your chart, and experience round 2 or the second phase of a certain amount of tension between the subjects that are ruled by Pisces in your chart and by Gemini in your chart. They don't have to be a replay of what happened in phase 1. It could be connected, it could be separate. You know, houses in science, they're wider than, they're specific in terms of the subject area to the extent that you can boil down each house to a few words, even a sentence or two, and that's it. But at the same time, it can show up in different ways. The second transit, of course, is this Venus retrograde transit, which is the most important transit in the chart right now. We are not done connecting with relationship and financial issues from the past. And in some regards, this can be considered a challenging transit, and it is challenged by these Pisces aspects, no question. It is challenged by them. But it can be a very beautiful, there can be something really positive and beautiful about it, because part of this reevaluation with Venus is to consider and reflect on how it is that a certain amount of natural flow and harmony and balance and fairness can be introduced into situations. So let's see where that goes and where that leads, but it's not without its challenge. It's not without its wrinkles. It's not without its pause moments. So if you're sensing it, and I've already gone through a certain period between, especially in May so far, then know that you're kind of on track to some extent. It's hitting people with different intensities and in different ways. It doesn't have to hit people with the same intensity. Number 3, Mercury in Gemini for another few days, but being the ruler of this new moon chart, presenting its imprint onto this new moon. The theme of communication will continue to play out as an important facilitator through this next month, in terms of bringing some of these financial and relationship reevaluations and some of the conflict between crises that started in late 2015 and 2016, and how these dynamically and creatively interact with each other and stand each other off and affect each other and challenge each other at play, however that shows up and however that plays out in the chart. Now, to the Pisces transits, which is really what I want to honor in this video. At the end of the day, remember one thing. Even though I will acknowledge right away that the more conducive, the more helpful in some ways aspects of the chart is the Venus retrograde insofar as what it is uncovering. And with the relationship and financial reassessment, reevaluation, that's the right word, it doesn't mean that every relationship or financial situation that you are reevaluating is going to remain as you move forward. But as I've mentioned to you, stay in the reevaluation phase. That's the mystery of this. The reevaluation continues somehow, even though with the new moon, with the moon reduced to nothing, feels like, really, there's more? I don't sense it anymore. I don't feel it anymore. Pay attention to, continue to stick with the reevaluation if you can. I'm not asking you to stay in a situation that is harmful to you or continue to spend money on something that doesn't make sense anymore. So make the changes and the decisions that you need to make. But when it comes to either jumping into a relationship with someone, having the final word on it, or separating from someone, give it a certain amount of time. Wait for Venus to go direct on June the 25th. Wait, ideally, for Mercury to go direct by about July the 13th. Wait till about the end of the July to just get a sense of where things are at, so that things can become clearer. And you can then determine what this reevaluation and rethinking and reprocessing period really brings to you as things to consider. Wherever Mars is, and Mars is in Pisces, and Mars directly squared and challenged the new moon, is where a lot of the chart energy plays out, because a lot of our energy goes to where Mars is. A lot of our energy to take care of goals and take action and get things done. And in some ways with Mars, it's very difficult not to think in terms of combat. It's not to think in terms of taking up a challenge, attack and defense, even if the action is to clean up the house or clean the room or whatever it is, you're still kind of combating something. You're combating dust, even if the idea is to, whatever it is, take care of the most mundane of chores and tasks. And wherever Pisces is, you may be doing that. It's a little bit more than mundane, but it's an opportunity to take action around areas that we've been spiraling out of, the crises in late 2015, 2016, something else I've been saying forever and ever. And so there is a necessity. Indeed, you will feel the compulsion and the need. You cannot escape it. That is the biggest difference, I think, in what I'm saying here and what I said in my New Moon in Gemini video, which is to give Mars his due. He's not comfortable. He's not happy, given the fact that he's in Pisces. He's not miserable and wretched and dysfunctional, but it's not. But work has to get done. Certain tasks have to get taken care of related to where the sign of Pisces is in. And somewhere in the execution of this task, this reevaluation process gets challenged, triggered. They're talking to each other. One feeds the other. The reevaluation helps define and determine certain things about tasks that are being executed in Pisces. The execution of tasks in Pisces leads to and feeds the sense of needing to reevaluate where things might be financially or from a relationship perspective. Remember, if this is heading you in a positive way and you're just in a process where you're taking care of past opportunities and meeting them, go for it. You do not need to get into a place of worry. Indeed, this is just a reading. It's a general reading. Listen to it, go, thanks a lot, astrology man, put it to the side, and if it shows up in some way, you can always come back to it to refer to it. Okay? So the most important part of this video, as opposed to the New Moon and Gemini video, is that Mars cannot be ignored. And it is a creative interplay between the dynamics between Pisces and Gemini. It can, and even if it feels like over the past 3 days, I don't know, Abhi, I'm not feeling all that, it will show, I think it will show, it is starting to show up. It is starting to show up. This communication and reevaluation and a certain and an annual review of where Gemini is at, and some actions that need to be taken that feed and lead directly into this full moon lunar eclipse on June the 5th. Somehow being in dynamic conversation, sometimes challenged, sometimes leading to revelations with activities in Pisces. Now, one more note in this video that I want to say that I did not, I feel, adequately cover in the new moon in Gemini video, which is that when it comes to Neptune and Pisces, yes, there is the reputation for Neptune for deceit and all that kind of. Neptune's ultimate purpose is spiritual. And so it, along with Mercury, the communication planet, being the two planets here that are at their strongest and most powerful, and two planets that were facing off each other at the time of the new moon, somewhere the news and the information, the communication that is brought to you, challenges, feeds, creatively affects a certain amount of spiritual growth that is occurring in the part of the chart that has to do with Pisces and cannot be ignored. And it's a spiritual growth that is often associated with a certain amount of egoic loss, in terms of if we really want a relationship to work, if we really want something to happen a certain way, if we really, on the material realm, are dealing with a certain kind of attachment, Neptune does come in and say, just a second, all of this is bullshit. All of this is bullshit. Here's what's real. And what is real is your connection with spirit. And as I've mentioned with Neptune before, there is this continual sense of these relationships are not yours, this financial situation, so whatever it is, whatever in the material realm in Pisces that there is, that Neptune is trying to dissolve or do its spirit or spiritual thing, the overall message is understand, in sort of Vedic Hindu terms, the Maya aspect, the illusion aspect of 3D reality, which is so serious. So somewhere our very real and necessary reevaluation of relationship and financial circumstances, and how they feed into and impact what we value and where we want to go, are challenged by and put into creative conflict by the fact that crises from 2015, 2016 require some action on our side that is necessary. And somewhere as Mars heads towards Neptune, and yes, there are a whole set of interpretations of this transit that I will cover in another video, somewhere keep in mind that there's an overall that there is an overall message of spiritual growth that is associated with all of this, that connects you to spirit. I know that sounds very vague. I'm saying it and I'm just like, is there another way that I can put it? I would say there's the dealing with the micro, in terms of whatever it is that you're considering and dealing with. If you can see my face, good for you. But then don't forget to connect on the macro level with your own connection with spirit, your own connection to faith, your own connection of where that you might be where you need to be right now. And let that guide you through those moments when you feel unmoored. There may be a method to the madness. Indeed, as I look at the chart, and this time around in this video, integrate the Pisces energies, I would say that there probably is a method to the madness. And you would not be able to deal with the most important here, this is how I'm going to end this. You will not be able to deal with the most important transit in your chart right now, which is the Venus retrograde, the reevaluation of financial and relationship realities. That occurs till June the 25th and then starts to move forward again and integrate everything through August the 7th without these challenges from Pisces. It's the challenges from Pisces and where Pisces sits in your chart and the crises that it started in late 2015, 2016 that somehow inform in their independent execution and sometimes codependent execution and reveal what you really need to know and see in this relationship and financial evaluation. It may not be, unless it's absolutely critical, a time for action, as it may be a time for reflection, except that in the sign of Pisces, where action needs to be taken to deal with either issues related to the 2015-16 crisis or wherever Pisces sits in your chart and what that deals with. Some of these tasks are small, some of these tasks are bigger. Their action, it's not just that it needs to be given. With Mars there, it will be given. You will be demanded to take action. It could be, as I said, it could be as simple as if this stuff is taking, if you have Pisces in your 4th house, you could be cleaning a house somehow. You could be taking advantage of this lockdown to clean up rooms, empty out boxes, all that kind of stuff. You know, I'm just going to give that one example. If this is happening in your health sector, you may realize that certain actions need to be taken in order to reassess certain health situations, and you working remotely with a physician or something like that to deal with prescriptions in some way, or take care of find a new routine, you know, that helps you, or find a new solution that helps you sleep better, you know. Certain amount of action. I'm talking about mundane things. I'm not even talking about big crisis related things, but somewhere that connection to 2015-16 is there. Okay. Wow. Never again at this time. If you found this video useful, and it's coming up again, guys. The new moon in Gemini, you're going to start to feel it. You know, it's not a repeat of what we dealt with necessarily starting April the 4th and reconnecting perhaps with older things that we had to reevaluate and go over and look at, and some of the things that were playing out in May. But there is a second phase that reaches a peak or a culmination on this June 5th eclipse. So in a few days, you're going to be back in the thick of it, and you are going to be feeling it and dealing with it. However, it starts to show up. And again, if it doesn't show up in a dramatic way for you, let it go. Found this video useful, even though I'm invisible at this point in time, much like the fairies in Midsummer Night's Dream. You know, go ahead and share it and let people enjoy it if you feel like they are going to enjoy it. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. Not all my videos are this dark. In fact, none of them are this dark, people. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon so you can be notified when I do new videos. And my contact information is in the subject area. You may not choose to be in contact with me, since I'm showing up as the Prince of Darkness in this particular video, but I'm going to get this done so that we're done. And you can use my contact information to reach out regarding rates for readings, or rates for me making an easy to read version of your chart that shows you which signs and which houses, but you will need to know your birth time for that. All right, and over and out. Next video probably on Mars conjunct Neptune. Okay.